Let's talk about psilocybin.
It is a mystical experience. Unbelievable value for PTSD, for depression, anxiety, for addiction of certain substances. It dislodges all the trauma in the body that the client is willing to release. Forgiveness is about me taking that energetic hook out of my flesh.
This is our so-called reality.
So, let's talk about psilocybin.
Yes.
I went to do. When did you start? Because I'm terrible with years.
So
When did you do your first journey?
So for me, Dan, there's two journeys I've walked with psilocybin. The first part of my journey with the psilocybin was in my active addiction days. And
Like
psilocybin,
as a party drug.
yes, I used it recreationally. I used it as a party drug. I was gleefully oblivious to the actual sacredness and power of this incredible plant. So that was my first meeting of the psilocybin. Recreationally, it always ended in a very bad trip for me.
Of course.
Because now that I know the energy of it, I have the gift and the ability to attract and feel people's energy. So what would happen recreationally is all these broken people would end up around me, and I would go into a bad trip because I could feel their energies. Then in 2015, I did ayahuasca for the first time. And I had done 5 ayahuasca journeys when a beautiful angel came to visit one day for lunch and said that she's going to do a psilocybin journey with a lady in Johannesburg. And instinctively in that moment, I just knew that's the way I need to go.
Well, I remember when I had done it, I said, Gary, you've got to try these. And you were like, no, I don't dig mushrooms.
Yes.
It's never ended well. I'm like, this is not the same thing, dude.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like so up your alley. It's not even funny.
Yes. And I will love and thank you for the rest of my time
Well, I mean,
on this planet.
it's just the way it is, hey?
Yes, that you introduced me to this beautiful soul who was doing the work. So I had done 5 ayahuasca journeys, and then I went and I did the first guided psilocybin journey. That was in 2020.
Yeah.
It was after hard lockdown, remember? And it was in a stage in my being and life where I just knew that my heart, I call it my heart's work. If I don't start now, like the train is going to leave the station without me, and I'm still
Yes.
going to be on the platform. So after COVID and the hard lockdown, I first had to, I had my journey, the first psilocybin guided journey. The lady I journeyed with is unbelievably gifted.
She's so psychic.
Absolutely.
It's freaky.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the download and the information I was given by the medicine and by her totally correlated, and it was like the key perfectly fitting into the lock. And in that journey, I was unequivocally told that this is the work I have to do.
Mm.
It happened at the time where COVID and the whole global pandemic had influenced my company to the point where, for just breaking even every month and paying what we have to, we couldn't get there. So before I started working with the medicine very beautifully.
Close that chapter.
Yes, it took my ego and it went, this is what you identify with. This is who you think you are in this world. The car, the house, the company, the luxuries, the walking into a shop and taking stuff off the rack without looking at the price. That was my life. It was very ego driven. And before I started doing my work, I firmly believe the medicine created the space for me to close the company, release my car, release my house, release everything I had associated as my ego in that world, so that I can start this work. And it, as you very clearly know, it's been a unbelievably beautiful, challenging 4 years since I did my first psilocybin journey. And out of that first journey, I kept on journeying. I kept on going to people to learn and to understand this path that's being shown to me. And I've been doing unbelievably deep work because the medicine very clearly showed me that this is the path I have to walk. I will be supported. I must have faith and trust. And in the last 4 years, I have done more than 100 journeys personally and assisted people in their journeys. So I just want to be very clear. The way I do my work is only my way. Every human being and every soul who feels called to do this work can only do this work, as far as I'm concerned, from where they are and who they are. And you definitely, we're going to take that into a journey, even though I try and be as neutral as I can be, I'm still a human being. And whatever happens in the journey flows through me, but there are sometimes where little
Triggers.
Absolutely, where little remnants stay behind. So when I do my work, Dan, it's based on 3 pillars: acceptance, forgiveness, and love. And I feel that those three things are interlocked, and that we cannot have the one without the other. So either in a weekend retreat in a group or on one-on-one work, the acceptance part of the day is we will constellate. If it's your first time, we constellate your core family. Should you come back and do more work and feel that there's deeper work to be done, we will constellate the issue you come with. So just on constellations, you can constellate the land, you can constellate any organization, you can constellate your relationship with anything around you. But for me, I always start with the family of origin, because your family of origin is going to be the mold for every other thing that you experience energetically in this world. And what I say to a client is, the acceptance part of the constellation is, you set it up the way you see it, it ends the way it is. And we have to accept the energy of what is, that it never was, or it hardly was, the way I always thought it was. Then following from that, we do a forgiveness process. And I always say to people, it's not the Hollywood romanticized idea of forgiveness, where I say, Dan, I forgive you, and everything that happened that I forgive you about just magically vanishes.
Dissipates, yeah.
That's not what we work with. The forgiveness we work with, it's internal self-forgiveness. It's forgiving myself for putting myself in the path for that to happen to me. It's forgiving myself for creating the energy where that could happen to me. And what I say to the clients is, we work with specific people, with the relationship of forgiveness. It's not a global, general forgiveness. It's very specific, depending on what shows itself and reveals itself in the constellation. So I say to the client, whatever reveals itself in your mind or whatever is released as a thought, from the smallest small to the biggest big. So if I, for instance, say, oh, I forgive my father for not tying my shoelaces as a child because I couldn't. It's for me, it's like, oh, that's such a small thing. Or I forgive my father for dying when I was 6 years old. It's the same energy and the same weight that both of them carry. And both those things, if you visualize it, it's like a energetic fishhook in my flesh. And in the forgiving of that, I am not justifying what happened. I'm not excusing the other. I am not saying that the event never happened. The forgiveness is about me taking that energetic hook out of my flesh. Because all those things we feel we need to forgive other people for are like energetic fishhooks sitting in our flesh. And it is slowly but surely poisoning us and making us sick.
Definitely. And also, like, from a trigger perspective, every time that thing is pulled, it's absolutely painful, versus if it's not there, it's not necessarily painful anymore.
And beautifully put, I love the pulling of it, Dan, because once I've removed that hook out of my flesh, that person can pull on that string till they are blue in the face. And I'm just going to go, thank you. I'm not going to be reactive or triggered into that anymore.
Yes.
So that's the forgiveness portion of the work I do with people. Then we will go into the psilocybin journey. At this point in time in South Africa, sadly and heartbreakingly, psilocybin is still a unlegal substance. There are a beautiful soul fighting the legal fight, and she now has a case in front of the High Court to legalize psilocybin for therapeutic use.
Her name is Monica Krumhout. Everybody go check her out.
She is the most incredible human being. She is a way shower. She is a light bringer, and she has gifted me with this gift of working with this plant medicine in Africa, because for me, she is the godmother of psilocybin work in South Africa and Africa. And I'm very clear that we all are given a role we have to do with this work, especially now at the precipice of it globally being recognized as extremely therapeutic. It has unbelievable value for PTSD, for depression, anxiety. It is very helpful for addiction of certain substances. So the work that the medicine does is bigger than me. And I just want to acknowledge that when people listen to this podcast, that my wish and my prayer is that it gets legalized as soon as possible. But I need to put that out there as a disclaimer that at this point in time, unfortunately, it's not legal as yet. I trust the medicine. I trust that it will show us what we need to know and that it will take us where we need to go. So in a journey, Dan, as we're sitting here, we both vibrate at a certain frequency. And that vibration, your vibration and mine, is dependent on the trauma we've had in our life, difficulties we've had in our life. And each one of those things creates our energy to be dense. We are born with unbelievably high cosmic consciousness energy. And the more we learn and the more we move away from that, the denser our vibration becomes. So with the psilocybin, It has an unbelievably high cosmic consciousness vibrational energy. The journey, when I do a journey, is with music. I have a playlist. It's 4 hours long. The journey normally is 4 hours. And what I intend to do with the vibration of the psilocybin and the vibration of the music is to send that through the person journeying through their body. The speaker is on the ground at the feet. I work from feet up, out through the crown chakra, and I work on the chakra system. And with the psilocybin and the music, it flows through the body and it dislodges all the trauma that the person journeying is willing to let go of. Because we love our trauma.
Oh, yeah.
As you very clearly and beautifully know, I have clung to my trauma for more than 45 years. And the more I do this work and the more I'm in this work and I journey and I assist people to find their truth, the more I let go of my story and my trauma.
Yeah. Because it becomes part of your identity.
Absolutely, Dan.
And also, like, some people won't let go of their trauma because they're scared. If I get better, my husband will leave again because he
Yes.
came back to look after me. If I get well, my insurance will stop paying. There's many reasons that people want to remain sick. That's why they say if you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves.
And I firmly believe that our trauma becomes part of our ego. Our egos are trauma-based or trauma directed. So the intention with which I do the work is that with the medicine, the plant medicine and the music, it dislodges all the trauma in the body that the client is willing to release. Because there's an incredible book, Basil van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, where he explains trauma and how it's actually stored in our bodies.
Yes.
And
At a cellular level.
at a cellular,
and that's why
absolutely.
it's called dis-ease.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I endeavor to dislodge and release as much trauma out of the person's body so that they have the capacity to fill that with stuff that really motivate them and make them feel more of who they are.
What I love about psilocybin, so whenever someone asks what it's like, because that's often people are very scared of it because it is like the ocean, it's so vast. A higher intelligence exists. We all agree on that, no matter
Absolutely.
where you come from a religious standpoint. And for me, when you consume high levels of psilocybin, you have a direct portal into that higher intelligence. And it allows you to view yourself and your subconscious mind, which is where all of this cuck is stored, from a higher self perspective.
Yes.
And to have grace. And again, the best part about it as well is, like you said, acceptance is one of the words. Whatever you resist will persist. Because now you've
Absolutely.
consumed the medicine, so you've committed to doing the work. And if you resist it, it's a force way more powerful than anything that you can resist. And so you will have a quote unquote bad trip
Uncomfortable trip.
because
Yes.
you are resisting the process. Whereas if you just let energy flow, and as you say, ask the question, what are you here to teach me? Then you're likely to have a better
Yes.
understanding. Also, one thing I want to say is, like, when you say chakras, and it sounds so woo-woo, like,
Yes.
I mean, I really didn't believe in any of this stuff, but I like to think of it more from a perspective of, okay, if you talk about the base chakra, like energy field, because our bodies are made of different fields. Like, you can
Yes.
feel your heart is
Yes.
different to your stomach, is
Yes.
different to your head.
Yes.
And we often use things like, I can, like, it was painful in my heart.
Or it's a gut feel.
Yes,
Or-
exactly.
Yes.
when you play deep music, that is shifting stuff in the bottom,
Yes.
and you physically, you feel, because also when you eat the mushrooms, you put a blindfold on, you're in a sleeping bag, you totally go in. The music's like in you, around you, on
Yes.
top of you.
Yes.
It's like you've never experienced music like this in your life. You're watching sacred geometry if you're given the gift of it. Some people don't see it,
Yes.
but I feel like that's also
Yes.
part of their resistance
Yes.
and not being open
Yes.
to being shown. But yeah, it starts stirring. So like the
Yes.
those kinds of frequencies
Yes.
start moving stuff. And then as the journey progresses, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter.
Yes.
So maybe it's harps right at the
Yes.
end. And it allows you to experience also on a emotional, energetic level,
Yes.
what it is to stir all of this stuff
Yes.
up. Yeah, it's an absolutely mind-blowing,
Experience.
yes, and the fact that knowing like that we have access to this and that we don't even use a fraction of our potential
Yeah.
in terms of, for me, it opens up a portal into navigating
Yes.
that realm.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So when a person comes and journeys in a one-on-one or in a group, I always say to them, whatever happens on the bed or on the mattress is between you, your creator, and the medicine.
Mm.
I don't care who the creator is, just know that you're going to be working with your creator. And what happens is, for me, as I understand it, Dan, is it is a mystical experience. And the thing that fascinates my mind and that intrigues me endlessly is, how is it possible that almost every person sees the same colors and same geometries? It's a collective energy, absolutely. And yes, the person, I asked them to put an eye mask on because this work is about the internal. When we encounter a difficult situation or a difficult energy, it's so easy and so comfortable for us to find a external thing to then focus on so we don't have to deal with what's happening in our bodies. So you put a eye mask on because it's sensory deprivation, absolutely, and it shifts the focus from the external to the internal. Just loosely on, so each chakra has a function or a energy it works with. It has a vibration. It has a frequency and hertz that affects it and unblocks or releases it. And just recently, I've started working with a group of people where we really investigate, like, what is the music doing and what's happening in the body. And it is mind-blowing how. So, for instance, when I compile a playlist, the first few tracks I put in is to activate the spinal fluid, the Kundalini energy which comes from the chakras. And for me, spinal fluid, Kundalini is the same energy. And that's with rattle sounds like grass, like either grass rattling or any rattle kind of sound.
And it rattles you as well in that journey.
Yes.
It's uncomfortable.
Be-
But it starts moving
Yes,
stuff. Even.
yes, Dan. Because what I intend to do with that is I want to take the journeyer back to before they had words. Because we use words to confuse ourselves and others. So that's the starting place of my journey, is with ancient, what sounds to me like ancient chanting and the rattle sounds. And that activates the coccyx, the energy of connecting the spinal fluid and the brain. And remember, your whole brain floats in spinal fluid. And as we're doing this work, I'm having an understanding that is the spinal fluid the substance that the psilocybin molecule enters that gives us the visions we see. that's a hypothesis. It's a theory I have, but it's something that's very intriguing to me. Then when we start with the root chakra, it is very intense, deep drumming. It is very deep male vocal chanting, and then it goes into singing bowls as it progresses through the body. And I always say to the client that if you are having an uncomfortable journey or there's something that you're struggling with in the journey, always follow the music. Every note pulls you forward through the journey. Every note is something that opens a different aspect of the being in the journey. For me, Dan, it is, I ask the person to go through a cleanse a week before the journey, just to cleanse our bodies and to prepare the temple, which is our body, for the mystical experience we're about to have.
Mm.
It is to be met with honor. It's to be met with grace and integrity. So the cleanse I ask the people to do before the journey for a week is to not eat any meat, to have a vegetable-based diet, to not have any coffee. A rooibos tea is fine to drink, and water. And then 3 days before the journey, not to have any recreational substances or drugs, and not to have any sexual release, either with the self or a partner. Because in the psilocybin journey, the medicine works with that energy. And as the music moves through the chakras, it pulls that sexual energy into the heart. And when that energy meets the heart, there is such a beautiful heart center opening
Mm.
where we experience love, a deep, deep, sacred love.
Mm.
And in today's society, I mean, if there's any discomfort or any tension between a couple, the easiest way to get over the discomfort is to go and have a shag quickly, because then everything's fine again. No, all you're doing is you're putting another layer over the discomfort and dis-ease that's between you and your partner. And the making love or the shag is not going to fix any of that. It's just putting another plaster on it. And then one day you end up in your relationship and the plaster falls off, like this thick wad of plaster falls off the wound, and you sit with your partner and you go, what the hell are we doing? Why are we here?
Mm.
And and that's the energy, just from a total energetic point of view. It's pulled into the heart.
I heard something on Instagram that said, you're not horny, you just need a hug.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
sometimes very
Yes.
true.
Yes.
Yeah. What we're
And
seeking is not
absolutely.
actually.
And in our society, it has become hypersexualized. And I feel I did it in all my relationships, and I'm unlearning it in my marriage with my husband at the moment, is to not use sex as a plaster or a tool
Of
to get out
avoidance.
to get out of a difficult situation that I don't want to talk about. And I feel that as a society, we have been led down this path. And another thing I look for in the psilocybin journey, I call it the breath of life. So when we journey, when we go to that place of deep knowing and deep connection, when we meet the medicine in a holy spiritual way, we also meet ourselves. And as the trauma is dislodged and as the trauma leaves our body, we have a reawakening within us. Some people call that an ego death. I personally do not like the phrase at all, because I firmly believe that if I kill my ego, I kill myself.
Of course.
My ego is the thing that makes me get up in the morning, that makes me put my hair in this hairstyle, that makes me dress the clothes I dress in, that makes me
You have to work with it. You can't get rid of it.
absolutely. So when any person comes to me and says to me they want to experience an ego death, I say to them, I'm not the person for them to work with. I can offer you an ego disillusionment. Absolutely. And that's what happens. And for me, the breath of life is connected to the ego disillusionment. And for me, the ego disillusionment is when the trauma has been released from my body. My ego has to adapt because that part of the ego is no longer there. So it's disillusioned, and it's in a split second. And I mean, you've experienced this in your work with the plant medicine and your meeting of the plant medicine. It is a split second thing that happens. And the breath of life, every person who's ever journeyed with me, at least once, sometimes even more than once, has a moment where everything becomes dead still. The energy in the person's body becomes completely still, and they go, and then they carry on journeying. That for me is the breath of life. That is the indicator that a ego disillusionment has just happened.
There's an awakening.
Yes, yes.
So, what's the craziest thing that you've experienced on a personal journey eating psilocybin?
As a person working on myself, the craziest thing I've ever experienced was the first time I did a 5-gram psilocybin journey. At one stage, I sat upright, and I had a painting with me across with a all-seeing eye in the middle on a white cloud. And as I looked at the picture, the all-seeing eye came out of the picture and it went into my solar plexus. And the spirit of the psilocybin said to me, I am now going to show you exactly what you'd have to do and how you have to structure your work. And everything I do, Dan, every time you've journeyed, every retreat and group work you've attended with me, whatever we did was shown to me by the medicine. That's the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. As a facilitator, as a watcher, I have had people run out of the room where something was shown to them in the journey, in the medicine, that they, for
Weren't
whatever
comfortable.
reason, was uncomfortable with, and they run. So then it's bringing them back into the room. I have experienced people disassociating completely in a journey. I have had people have panic attacks in the journey. Then I go and I ask for divine guidance. I ask for the cosmic consciousness because I don't have all the answers, Dan.
For sure. And that's actually what I was saying to you this morning is I've assisted on quite a few of these processes, and I'm fine when it's all good. But when it starts to get dark,
Yes.
I can't handle it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need an adult in this room. Gary, please help me. Like, for instance, when people get aggressive or they start to see things that are not there, then I'm like, yo, this is not the energy that I signed up for. But it's part of your work that you have to do.
100%. Yes, yes.
No.
It for me, Dan, my role in a journey, first of all, is safety.
Mm,
The safer I can make the space, the safer I can make my client feel, the deeper the client will go.
absolutely.
And for me, that is a rule with everything in my life. The safer I feel, the more open I can be.
And ironically, it's the more communication and boundaries that are set
Yes.
that allows
Yes.
for the process to be held and
Absolutely.
contained
Yes.
because there's parameters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So safety is the first thing. Confidentiality for me forms a part of safety.
Yes.
And I make a verbal agreement or promise to every single person I work with that I will, in under no circumstances, divulge anything they say, do, or experience in their journey. I always say to them, there's a caveat to the rule. I work with a therapist, and for me to hold the energy and to hold the energy of this work, I have to have a place
An
and an
outlet.
outlet where I can go, and whatever energy was loosened in me or whatever trauma it makes me think of, I have a person that I go to, a therapist I go to, a psychologist I go to, and then I'll say to the client, I will just say that in a journey, this was set loose in me or dislodged in me. We need to work on that. I don't say anything about who the person is or what the rest of it was.
Mm.
So that promise is very vital for me in a journey. So it's safety, confidentiality. And the most important thing in my work, Dan, is believing what the person saying to me is true. It's their truth. I never make the person wrong. I will ask them questions and I will ask them if they've seen things from a different angle, but I will never make them wrong. And it's that sense of you have the complete right to be fully present exactly the way you are. I've had in journeys people shadow. I do a lot of shadow work in journeys. There's a lot of shadow work involved for me in journeying out of the nature of what we go through in a journey. And I've had clients totally embody their shadow in a journey where other people might say to them, no, you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah,
I
it's
say,
terrifying.
everything is welcome here. Bring it. Bring your shadow. What is it in your shadow that needs to be healed now? So it's that.
It's always bringing it into the light.
Yes, Dan. Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Mm.
And that's what I do in the journey. I transmute through prayer, through ritual, and through presence. I transmute the negative energy that gets dissolved into the light. And I say to the client, what I ask you to do in a journey when you feel there's any negativity or darkness, to go lay it at your creator's feet so that it goes to the light. And that's the dance I dance throughout the journey.
Mhm.
I'm in the room while they're journeying.
But you're
And
not doing the work for them.
No, I'm absolutely not doing the work for them. I make sure everything is safe. I make sure everything is transmuted. I make sure no negative energy comes into the room.
Yeah.
And in the 5 years I've been doing it specifically the way I'm doing it now, I have been asked by Spirit 3 times to leave the room. What I do then is I go to the client and I say, I've been asked to leave the room. I go outside, I sit outside the room with my hands against the door so I can feel when that energy dissipates. And what I was informed or told, what happens is that I am not allowed to be present in the room for the healing that's about to happen. It's between the person, the medicine, and the creator. And my energy is influencing it in a way. So I remove my energy out of the room so that the client can have the healing
Mm.
they deserve.
So another question I want to ask is like about misconceptions around this work. Something I get asked a lot, because it is obviously something I like to talk about, but is, will I wet myself? And it's like, absolutely not. If you need a pee, you say, I need a pee.
Yes.
And you get up and you go pee. You may be a bit wobbly.
Yes.
And is it also about the work being demonic? And my answer to that is like, there's there's evil spirits and evil forces in our world anyways,
Okay.
and it's about exactly what you said. What did you invite into the room, and what will you tolerate? Because it's also a lot of the time people who drink excessively
Mhm.
are the ones who are the biggest non-believers in this kind of medicine. One, because they've probably tried it in the past and they got knocked on their ass, because it's not a joke.
Yeah.
But also I'm like, but you get blackout drunk and you think that energetic forces aren't attaching themselves to you
Yes.
when you're not conscious. At least when you eat mushrooms, you're fully aware that you've eaten mushrooms. I mean, you hallucinate,
Yes.
you do. But again, it's almost like lucid dreaming.
Yes, it is.
And ever since I've been doing the mushrooms, especially the high volumes, I lucid dream for like 3 or 4 hours every single night, every night. And I can
Beautiful.
navigate in the dreams
Yes.
as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's just about how open you are
Mm.
in the work
And Dan,
to be given the gifts.
yes, Dan, absolutely. And how we approach life, it is magnified in a journey. The medicine is going to show you exactly this is how you are in your world. This is a different way it could be.
Mm,
Choose.
mm,
The misconceptions I normally get, or what I've interacted with, or been brought, is people thinking it's going to be a jol, like it's going to be like a recreational journey.
mm.
And I'm
Like love and light,
absolutely.
peace, man.
Yes.
Mm.
And I'm, yeah, just for the experience. I'm like, no, you're here to work.
Yeah.
So that's a big misconception. What you touched on, absolutely, Dan, that they are going to have no
Control.
control or function of their body. Absolutely not. So when people journey with me, I say the instruction that's given is if you need any assistance, if you need someone to hold your hand, if you need to be hugged, if you need to say something to someone, if you need the bathroom, how am I going to know? You're going to raise your hand. You are going to be functioning enough and conscious enough to know, oh, okay,
Need to go to the
I need to,
bathroom.
yes.
Yes.
I then go to them, I assist them upright, I assist them to stand because your legs are wobbly. I take them to the bathroom, I wait outside, and then I bring them back to the bed.
This is reminding me of my grandmother. I need a pee. So let's go pee. No, fuck you. Okay. Do you want to pee or do you not want to pee? No, she doesn't want to pee, but she needs to pee. I mean, how many times does she tell you she needs to pee?
Oh, Dan, a lot, a lot. But even in that, Dan, if we now look back at it and we look at it from a overhead view, the energy that was playing out that day, and thank you to you and the incredibly strong woman in your lineage and your system for the honor that I was given to be present for 3 generations working together.
How amazing.
It
For me as
was,
well, it was absolutely mind blowing.
it is one of those gifts and events and happenings that's at the top of the list. And the energy between the participants was of a codependent nature.
Yes.
And what the medicine kept on showing me, and what the medicine instructed me to do in that, and it's just for that instance, was that there had to be a release and a relief of the codependent
Yes.
energy and connection that was happening. And if you remember, I also placed myself between the two people.
Yes.
And that was my work that night of saying, yes, there's someone else that can do it for you, but you paid me to do it.
Mm.
And I am responsible for you now. No one else in this room is responsible for you.
I remember at some point of that journey, I had my whole hand, like my whole fist in my mouth. And it felt so comfortable. I mean, if I have to put my fist into my mouth now, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
but I was a fetus
Yes.
in my mother's womb,
Yes.
and my
Dan.
fist was in my mouth, and I felt so cradled.
Yes.
It was unbelievable. I mean, I remember you came to me and you said, "Are you okay? Like, is your hand okay?" I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Yes.
It's like, "Oh, okay." My whole hand was in my mouth.
So if I've just made Dan, so for me, that was also a physical representation of the energy that was in the room, about blocking words to come out, about blocking the right and the need to verbalize and say and speak what's happening for me in relation to you. That's also for me a
And
representation.
also for me, I went back into a fetal status
Dan.
because my mom was still in a child
Yes,
with her mother.
yes, yes.
So there was room, there had to be room for all of that.
Sorry, just, and I know
We get
the
excited.
incredible thing about that, Dan, is when you were a fetus in your mother's womb, when she was a fetus in her mother's womb, every single egg that she would ever release and expel in her lifetime, every single egg is in the fetus in the mother's womb. So the generational connection and connectedness was absolutely there. And I feel that's why you could go back to the fetal place, because of the energy that was created between the three women in the room.
And also, like to talk about some profound things that have happened on journeys for me. I had a journey once where I took about probably an hour and a half of the journey to grow bones. So I was cells, then I was it's formed into a life.
Yes.
And I experienced, like, that's the thing with mushrooms as well. No one can take away. It's like more real than reality. It's so lived, so no one can take it away from you. It's like, it's very profound. Anyway, so I was this fetus, and then I was growing my bones, and it was so excruciating. It was so, I was like for an hour and a half, like it was. But then when I had grown into myself, I was so exhausted. But I realized the value of how long it actually took for me to grow full size.
Yes, Dan.
And how valuable my life actually is.
Yes.
And that I was created. Do you know what I mean? Like, again,
Yes.
it's easy to say these things, but when you live it, you start to develop a whole different kind of respect for your body and yourself. It's truly the first time I've ever felt love for myself of that nature. There's certain aspects of myself I loved in the past, but I absolutely rejected other parts of myself. Whereas, again, when you're allowed to see yourself from a higher perspective and you realize the sacredness of life and the sacredness of human life, because we are just the most amazing creatures made in the image of God.
Absolutely.
That for me was like, it changed my life completely. I haven't lived my life in the same way ever since doing the mushrooms.
Beautiful. The thought that came into my head when you were talking now was that we are all pilgrims, walking each other home, hand in hand, witnessing and honoring each other's journey. And for me, in a psilocybin, in a guided journey, I feel that the most. I am so viscerally aware of the other, of the energy, of the movement in the room. And I have had people lying on that bed, Dan, who had full conversations with spirit. And I've had a few clients say that at certain stages in the journey with specific music, they could feel the presence of their creator in the room.
That's where I met God.
Yes.
For real.
Yes.
And that's where I like solidified my
Yes.
relationship, which is
Beautiful.
the best gift I've ever been given.
Beautiful.
So I want to say, we're going to wrap this up now. But I want to say thank you for your time, for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I hope that more people do this light work, whether it's family constellations, whether it's mushrooms, whether it's ayahuasca, find the right people,
Absolutely.
but do the work,
Yes.
because
With discernment.
yes, of course.
Discernment.
Yeah.
If anybody watching or looking at this podcast, if you feel drawn to the medicine, when you make contact with the person you're going to journey with, potentially, discernment, feel in your body, do you feel safe with that person?
Is their language corresponding with my
Yes,
values?
absolutely, Dan.
Yeah.
Because if you go and journey with just anybody, and that person's energy can re-traumatize certain things.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the safety of it as
Yes,
well, because you
Dan.
can have a
Yes.
very bad experience if you don't work with the right people.
Yes.
It's not safe.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for seeing me. And I wish you all the best with this venture.
Thank you.
And I hope that your road is always flat and the wind always comes from behind.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this, please can you give us a subscribe at the bottom? And also, if you have any questions for Gary or myself, please drop a comment below. We're happy to do another episode together. So if you have more topics that you'd like us to touch on, please give us a shout. And then also, we were thinking about doing a family constellation process for you guys, so you can see what it looks like, and I'm happy to share mine.
Beautiful.
But yeah, thank you, and I'll see you again soon.
Blessings on your head, my darling.
Likewise.
Lots of love.